And therefore, he controls all the leaders out of Grand Orient Freemasonry, which include the Islamic leaders. For example, Saddam Hussein was one. Another one was King Hussein of Jordan. Another one was Ataturk of Turkey. Another one is Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. All these Muslim leaders are high-level Grand Orient Freemasons, and thus they are controlled by the Vatican. So the Masonic connection to the Muslim Brotherhood can never be overlooked. Second of all, we know that after World War II, that many of your top Nazis were brought out of Europe by means of the Jesuits using their Vatican rat lines, also called the Odessa. And many of these top Nazis went into the Near East. They went into Egypt. Dirlewanger, who was one of the heads of the Einsach groupies in the East, he went into Cairo. And then you have a couple who went into Damascus. But you have these high Nazi SS officers that have gone down into these Muslim nations and aided and abetted and been helpful in establishing the Muslim Brotherhood. We have the PLO. The PLO is led by Yasser Arafat. His uncle was Haji Min al-Husseini. He was a Freemasonic hoodlum, a Muslim, who was made the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem by Herbert Samuel. And Herbert Samuel was a Masonic Jew in England, in Britain, and because Britain had command of that land, breaking up the Ottoman Empire after World War I, they set up all their puppets in the new countries that they created. And one of their puppets for the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem was Haji Min al-Husseini. He was a Freemason. So the Jesuits in control of Britain and America for the entire duration of the 20th century set up all these Muslim leaders who were high-level Freemasons, secretly subordinate to the Pope.
Now, Eric, explain to us again and clarify for us the connection there between Freemasonry and the Vatican, because again, on the surface, a lot of people looking at this, they recognize the most of the Freemasonic brands. It's more clinging to a Protestant faction than to a Catholic one. But explain that for us, and what is the connection there?
Okay, remember that the Vatican always has an outward policy, but it is false. And then it has a secret policy, and that is the true policy. So the open policy of the papacy has, for the last 200 years at least, been anti-Masonic. That no Roman Catholic, at least till John Paul II made it okay for Roman Catholics to join the lodge, but that no Roman Catholic could join the Masonic lodge or else he would be excommunicated.
Yeah.
That was, are you with me there?
Yeah.
That's the open policy, or was the open policy of the Vatican till John Paul II. The real policy is that the Jesuits wrote the first 25 degrees of Scottish Rite Freemasonry in 1754 in the College of Clermont in France, Paris, France. I have that documented from a Masonic source, and it's in my book. So the Jesuits, in creating Scottish Rite, the first 25 degrees, they then created the 8 rites after that with Frederick the Great, when Frederick the Great, who was the head Freemason on the continent, protected the Jesuit order when Pope Clement suppressed the Jesuits with a papal bull in 1773, abolishing and extinguishing the Society of Jesus forever. And so it was Frederick II, or the Great, of Prussia, and it was Catherine II, the Great, of Russia, who were these two monarchs protecting the Jesuits during their 41-year suppression from 1773 to 1814. And during this time, the Jesuits were the masters of high-level Freemasonry, and they used their Grand Orient Masonic Lodge, in particular, on the continent, to foment and ignite the French Revolution.
Right.
And in igniting the French Revolution with Robespierre, who was Jesuit trained, the Jesuits then eliminated thousands of their enemies, including many Dominican priests, and then they brought Napoleon Bonaparte to power from Corsica.
Yeah.
And the Jesuits had been suppressed by the Pope. They had been expelled from South America. So some 2,000 Jesuits had been sent back from South America, from Paraguay and the holdings of Portugal and Spain, because the Portuguese and the Spanish monarchs suppressed them out of their countries and out of all their holdings. So some 2,000 Jesuits were sent back to Rome, and they then populated the island of Corsica off the coast of France. Well, it's no coincidence that Napoleon would arise from Corsica. So Napoleon was the great avenger for the Jesuit order in punishing the Roman Catholic monarchs of Europe for suppressing the Jesuits, for punishing the Pope, for imprisoning Pius VII for 5 years until he would agree to restore the Jesuit order in 1814. And they also used Napoleon for the destruction of many Protestants in Germany, to destroy the Protestant Dutch Republic in 1806. The Jesuits accomplished many things with their great avenger, Napoleon Bonaparte, only to then ultimately betray him and poison him at St. Helena. But the connection to Freemasonry is this, that Napoleon Bonaparte was a French Grand Orient Lodge Freemason. And his advisor, the second consul on the consulate, was Abbé Sieyès. And Abbé Sieyès was a Jesuit. So all the entire war maneuvers of Napoleon Bonaparte were dictated by Abbé Sieyès. Sieyès was on the Directory, and then he was the second consul on the consulate, the first consul being Napoleon. So this connection of Masonry to the Jesuits is undeniable, and this is also a connection to the Pope's Masonic Jewish Labor Zionists running Israel today, that they too are totally controlled by the papacy, by the Black Pope, through his control of Freemasonry.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm thinking back of the perfect kind of mix or blend, if you will, between Catholicism and Protestantism. I'm thinking of, for instance, the Anglican Communion that they have in the UK. I mean, some of the first United Grand Lodges were actually, if you will, formed at the churchyard of St. Paul's Cathedral, and this was during the time that, and this continues to this day, of course. The British Church, or the Church of England, is what is known as the Anglican Communion. What's your take on that, and is that a merge between the two?
Yes, the Jesuits have used Freemasonry to bring back all the Protestant sects. They've done it with the Presbyterians, with the Orange Lodge in Scotland. They've done it with the Dutch Reform, with lodges in Holland. They've done it in England with their Grandmother Lodge in London there. And you see Masonic power all throughout the old city of London. And just as an aside, we cannot forget that the Jesuits have controlled England since no later than King George III. That's 1760. That all the foreign policy of the English government has been pro-Rome, pro-papacy, anti-white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, anti-true British Protestant people since no later than 1760. The United States has been controlled by the papacy since no later than 1860, with the ultimate beginning of the war between the states in 1861. So all the domestic policy and all the foreign policy of the United States, which I call in my book the Holy Roman 14th Amendment corporate fascist socialist communist American empire, created in 1868 on July 28th with the declaring of the 14th Amendment to have been passed. With the creation of this empire, the American empire has been nothing but the hammer of the Pope to subdue all nations to the temporal power of the Pope, with a series of other purposes. So the way that the papacy has brought this about is by using their high Freemasons to run America and their high Freemasons to run England, to ultimately bring all sects back to the papacy.
What about this, expansion of the Anglo-American empire? A lot of other authors are looking into this fact that, with the wars, of course, we can take the most recent Iraq and Afghani war that is going on right now. That this is an attempt by the British and American empire, if you will, to try to dominate and control the world. Is that just a front, you think?
That's a front. It's the same kind of front that Hitler was accused of. That Hitler wants to conquer the world. He's going to come to America and conquer the world. That Hitler wants to have a 1,000-year Reich. That's all a front. That's all a propaganda lie. That's the open but false policy of the Vatican. The true policy of Hitler was to purge as many Jews out of Europe as possible, was to be involved in the creation or the recreation of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, which we call Israel. And I defend the Jews' right to their land, of course, but I do not defend the government that runs that country.
Yeah.
And also the purpose of Adolf Hitler was to kill as many heretic Orthodox people as possible. And on the other hand, on the flip side, then, because the Jesuits were controlling Stalin, and Hitler and FDR and Churchill all together, they were all working together. Then, towards the end of the war, the Jesuits were going to incite the Red Army to rape, pillage, and plunder the Protestant Prussian people, to the end that Berlin is destroyed, all the Protestant cities of Germany are destroyed, some 72 cities were bombed to smithereens, and so they were destroying the Lutheran Protestant Prussians and Germans in Germany, as well as destroying as many Jews out of Europe, as well as destroying Rotterdam, destroying as many Protestant cities as possible, the bombing of Hull and Coventry in England. So it was a tremendous pincer movement on behalf of the Jesuits controlling both sides, to the end now that Hitler never really wanted an empire. He hated the German people. He betrayed them many times. He ordered the bombing of Protestant cities by the Luftwaffe. He also ordered the German people to go down into underground sewers to evade bombing, only to flood them and drown thousands of them. So Hitler was out to destroy the British people, or the German people, under the guise of creating an empire.
Right.
Well, the same thing's being done here, under the guise of we're going to make the world safe for democracy.
Right.
Under that lying propaganda, what is happening is this government in this empire is busy creating the world as the enemy for the American people, particularly the historic white Anglo-Saxon Protestant American peoples. And so that every nation in the world will be our enemy because of this foreign policy of Washington controlled by the Pope. And at the same time, this is not a war of expansion, creating an empire. It's a war of annihilation. It's a war of annihilating the Shia Muslims, because the Shia, in differing between the Sunnis, the leaders of the Shia, or the leader of the Shia, is considered to be infallible. He's considered to be divine. Unlike the Sunni leader, he is considered a mere temporal lord. So there can be no man on the face of the earth that is considered infallible or divine except the Pope. Therefore, we have to destroy the peoples that would seek to make this man or follow this man as though he is divine.
I'm thinking about Skull and Bones, George W. the Boy Bush. If he and of course his administration, there's a lot of people behind that guy and so forth. We know that, but do you think that they are just pawns in this game that are kind of willingly playing along? Or do they have full knowledge of that they're actually destroying the empire? Or do you think that they actually, believe that they're helping to rebuild, and strengthen America?
No, they have full knowledge they're destroying it. That's why they've shut down all of our oil wells. They've shut down Gull Island on the Aleutian Chain in Alaska. Has more oil than all of Saudi Arabia. There's enough oil for 200 years. They've shut down Prudhoe Bay to us. If we had Prudhoe Bay and Gull Island, we would never need one drop of foreign oil ever again. They've deliberately shut it down, and the master of this topic is Lindsey Williams in his book, The Energy Non-Crisis. So they have deliberately made North America, dependent on foreign oil, specifically Middle Eastern oil, so that trillions of American dollars or Federal Reserve notes can be siphoned off over there for the benefit of the papacy, because one of their goals is the rebuilding of Babylon.
There you go. That is very interesting, because of course, many people are looking at the Iraq war that's all about oil, but what you're saying is that also is another ruse. That's another front that people on the first level down into the conspiracy, so to speak, can get trapped within, if you will. Is that right?
That's right. This great conspiracy is not economic. It is not political. It is religious. Everything is religion because of the Mystery Babylon religion that is essentially popery. And so everything they do is based on a Mystery Babylon, pagan Roman Catholic reason. And one of the things they want to do, as controlled by the Jesuits, because remember the Black Pope controls the papacy, is the rebuilding of the ancient city of Babylon, and the beginning of its building is Dubai.
Really?
So that's correct. Dubai is the beginning of rebuilding of the ancient area called Babylon, and the treasure city, the huge